her title speech, Reaching for Transformative Impact, Access, Persistence, and Transfer. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our keynote speaker today, Dr. Salomon-Fernandez. We are so lucky to have you today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. I'm so delighted to be here, and thank you for this invitation. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here, so I really appreciate it. So good to see everybody. This is going to be a little bit different, I need to warn you, compared to other keynotes that you've had. I hope it's different. I hope it's fun and different. So I'm going to start with my first question to you, which is, what can you not wait for until to do after the pandemic is over? So what are you most looking forward to whatever it may be when the pandemic is over?
And so just as a reminder, this is going to be a Crowd Live question. So anybody who hasn't logged into Crowd Live yet, do it now, and that will be the question that you will be answering.
So yes, the password is NETA 10. Thank you so much. All right, we'll give you a little bit more time. Take your time. It'll be interesting to see what kind of wild things pop up in there and what kind of traditional things pop up in there. Don't be afraid to go all out. When you get to see mine, they're going to be out there. I'm not going to lie. Oh, and if you have any thoughts on what you want to get out of this presentation, please put them in chat. I'm a big proponent of giving the people what they want. So please put that in there. Jessica, good to see you. Oh my gosh, blasts from the past. Let's see, who else do I know here? Hugs and kisses from friends, yes. Wait till you see mine about kisses. Beth, that's right, Beth is going to be here today. Beth is here. Amanda, I think I know you. I think you're in Connecticut, well, you're in Rhode Island. I could be wrong. That's kind of strange when you don't see people. Like, do I know you or do I not know you? Ryan, I think I might, oh no, the other Ryan I know is spelled with a Y, not an I. All right, so big reveal. Brian, can we start seeing what they're putting up there? Hey Beth, so good to see you. I hope you enjoy the talk today. And don't be afraid to tell me what you hope to get out of this. You know, it's not every day that you get a president, and one, I think I'm a little bit normal. I'm very normal. If not normal, maybe a little strange in a good way. You'll get to see a little bit of that to this presentation. Can we see what they put, Brian?
So that the answers are right on their phones.
Oh, it's right on their phones. Oh, duh. I should have done the same. All right. May I ask you to read some of the things that we're seeing?
I would love to, if that's okay. We've got concerts, vacation, hugging my mom, festivals, traveling to visit family, time with friends, hugging loved ones, seeing my family, hugging, seeing people on the road, travel, vacation, friends, family, concerts, international travel, visiting out-of-state family, taking my kids out and about. There are so many on here. So if you log in too as well, you'll be able to see all these great finally socializing my child. I hear you. I've got a couple that are trapped downstairs and they're eating at a restaurant with friends and family. These are so many things that we're all just waiting for.
That's great. That's great. It's so nice to see that. The person who said about driving, I kind of feel the same way too. I miss having places to go to. I miss driving. So we are going to get started, and please don't be shy. And I'm not kidding about putting the things that you would like to see me talk about on your screen. Let's see. So the title of my presentation today is Reaching for Transformative Impact, Access, Persistence, and Transfer. And we are going to have a little bit of fun. So my post-pandemic life, you know what I'm looking forward to? Well, one, not buying toilet paper. Believe it or not, I have enough for another pandemic for myself, my family, and for our next door neighbors. And I have to say, it's not a pandemic phenomenon for us. We just happen in my house to have tons and tons of toilet paper. Don't ask me why, but when everyone was raiding the stores, we were the one family that was sitting back like, yep, we've got this one. I don't know why, but we always have like a half a year's supply of toilet paper at my house. That's how we roll, I guess. Pun intended, clearly. I will hug and kiss everyone I know, like many of you. And I'm going to do it like the natives of Brittany and Loire in France. If you know that those people, they kiss a lot. Everyone gets 2 kisses on each cheek. I mean, only the facial cheeks, but 2 kisses on each cheek, right? Imagine what you must smell like after the whole family kisses you. I will invite my friends for a mask burning party. Oh my goodness. Especially for the ladies. Are you getting those like little pimples all around your face, like on your cheeks, around your mask line? Yeah, I hate those. I started seeing a dermatologist because I just cannot stand those things. So I will definitely invite my friends for a mask burning party. Looking forward to that. I will wave to all the Massel drivers on the road zooming by because they'll be zooming on the road and not on a computer. Who's tired of the Zoom life? I'm so tired of the Zoom life, and I imagine many of you are also. I see that I am helping to admit folks. All right. So I'll be looking forward to being on the road. And I think I have quite a bit in common with a number of you in that regard, or at least one person. All right, shall we get down to business? A little bit of what we are doing here today. And I'm hoping, Carolyn, you can help me keep track of the time. Please let me know.
Absolutely, yes. And if you go
all
over,
right.
That's all right.
Okay, sounds good. All right, getting down to business. I promised you it will be a little bit of a wild show today. Add a little bit of flair. So who are our students? Who are they? Our students, they are enrolled in college while in high school. I think you are seeing that as we are seeing, we're having more and more dual enrolled students who are getting a head start in their college degrees. They take a gap year or 2. They are very cost conscious. They are more socially aware and environmentally conscious. When you think about Greta Thunberg, who is now in college, when you think about the demonstrations that we had back in the spring, many of them were organized by students, by young people. The big climate change before the pandemic, the big climate change protest demonstrations globally were organized by a lot of young people with support from their older generations. But we are seeing that they are so much more aware and are also demanding that on our college campuses, that we be much more environmentally conscious and adopt environmentally sustainable practices. They are digital natives, yet they don't know how to use Word or Excel. How many of you are seeing students who are enrolled in classes, they are all day on their devices, but they couldn't work on Excel or Word for the life of them to save their lives, I guess. They are more entrepreneurial and they are engaged in the gig economy. We're seeing so much more of that. Students who have little side gigs, students who have little businesses, and they are happy. They're not even thinking about having a job that has a retirement, that has benefits. They're just living the life. And we have Gen Z, as I do. I have 2 kids who want to live in their parents' basements with no driver's licenses. You know, they want us to continuously be their chauffeurs, and they are just fine enjoying the free ride living with us. They are not like us Gen Xers and baby boomers. We couldn't wait to get out of the house. We couldn't wait to go to college. We couldn't wait to get our driver's licenses and to get our independence. But Gen Z, they're like, whatever. And we're seeing the same thing for some millennials also. The younger millennials, they don't mind living with mom and dad. They don't mind living in the basement. They don't mind living in the same childhood homes that they had, childhood bedrooms that they had with their teddy bears and all. So who are our students? They are also millennials. If you're at a community college, you'll know that we have a lot more millennials. They have taken over the baby boomers. So in terms of the largest generation that is in the workforce right now, it is millennials. We just passed straight over the Gen Xers. We never had a chance. We went straight from the boomers to the millennials in the workforce. Our students are also poorer, and they struggle with mental health, with food and housing insecurity, and overall economic security. I think many of you are also seeing that on your campuses. When we stopped for the pandemic, when we had to go remote, so many of our students didn't have didn't have a computer, they didn't have a Chromebook, they didn't have internet at home, and many of them didn't have food. And for some, it had been an ongoing phenomenon. People who were already students who were already economically challenged, who then found themselves not having a job, having to move in with people, and having to also work frontline jobs because those were the jobs that were available. And that continues to be the trend for so many of our students. Our students, they bring great assets, but not always the kinds of assets that lead them to academic success. And they work more. We are seeing that more and more. I can tell you, I can share a little anecdote with you that when we put out some scholarships that we had for our students during the pandemic, we had so many students who came to us and said, you know, I'm having an opportunity to work 80 hours a week. This is the most money that I'm going to be able to make, and I can actually pay my college tuition with that. I'm going to withdraw so that I can work these crazy hours. So we're seeing that students are working more and more. It's sort of a bifurcation. You have some that have great opportunities to work more, and you have others who don't have a job and who are struggling. And they stop out more, and they're more likely to be adversely impacted by the pandemic. Why? Pretty clear. We serve students who are economically disadvantaged, and that is also why our community colleges this year, this fall, we saw the greatest drop in enrollment compared to all other segments of higher education. So access, persistence, and transfer. There is no access, there's no transfer without access and persistence. All right, I don't know, Carolyn, I don't know if there's somebody else here who's also admitting people.
Can you actually make me a co-host and I will start to admit people? Sorry.
Oh, fantastic. No worries, because I've been admitting people as I'm talking, which.
Yeah, I know, it's very distracting.
Yes. All right, how do I make you a, oh, yep, I see. Hold on a second. Are you NETA?
Yes.
Okay, all right, here you go.
Got it, thank you.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, all right, sorry about that, folks. All right, returning back to our regularly scheduled program. So, let's see. So the Holy Trinity for enrollment management, and it's access, persistence, and transfer. Why? Because we know recruitment is more expensive. It is more expensive to chase one student after another every year, and we end up losing these students. And when we end up losing these students, that's all that time, all that effort down the line. And we're talking about admissions folks, we're talking recruitment folks, we're talking financial aid folks, we're talking advising, who are all engaged in chasing those students. So it's a real problem for us. We know it's more cost effective, similarly, to retain the students that we have. It's easier to advise them because we know what they want. We know what their dreams and their goals are. We know what the goal post is for them. We know how they define success. And let's face it, if you're in the Northeast, we are also facing more competition, and it means more choices for students. So we don't offer them an experience that they like. We don't make the recruitment and the onboarding process easy for them. They walk with their feet. They can go somewhere else. There are so many other colleges that are open and waiting for them. So let me just stop here and ask a question of all of you guys. Why else might access and persistence matter to transfer? And what other factors, in your opinion, also matter? Don't be afraid to speak up or put something up in the chat. Gosh, we are so shy. Are we really that shy? For some reason, I cannot see the chat anymore. Oh, yep, there we go. Relationships, absolutely, and we know that relationships lead to retention. Precisely. We're seeing some really good, yep, jobs and careers, percentage of first-gen students who may not know where to ask. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Lack of cultural capital. Absolutely. And, you know, I really like that comment about the cultural capital because that cuts both ways. We have cultural capital, not just the students having them, but also in terms of our campuses having the cultural dexterity to be able to work with students. One of the things that we are working on our campus is really helping our faculty and staff develop that cultural dexterity. So when we talk about the evolution of cultural competency, it cuts across not just race and ethnicity, but also the degree to which we are connected to contemporary things that the new generations are doing. We do not being able to connect with students in these different ways, not knowing the culture, not knowing the popular culture, not knowing the songs that they listen to, not knowing their vernacular, not knowing the popular lingo that they are using. All of those things we are realizing now are having adverse impact on our ability to build relationships with students and to really develop that level of cultural competency. We're seeing some more comments coming through. Flexibility of options, absolutely. And one of the things that I'm also seeing, and at our college, we're just beginning to work on in terms of our strategic planning, is to allow programs that conceive of students going back and forth between an industry recognized credential and an actual degree. So for students, instead of stopping out, and instead of using our traditional certificate mechanism to be able to say, hey, look, we haven't seen you for a period of time. How can we create a custom credential around what it is that you want to do, whatever job that you're in right now, that will allow you to have something, and to also remember us as the institution that met you where you were, where you needed to be, that allowed you to get a job that pays more money than what you are making right now. Because at the end of the day, we know that the undergraduate degree, without it, they're going to hit hit a ceiling with not having that credential. So those are some of the things that we are looking at my institution, and it's good to see that many of you are also looking at some of those things. So to me, when I think of access and graduation, including transfer, and I think of it as a national imperative, right? One of the things that we've seen is that over the last 40 years of high economic productivity and prosperity, we have seen an income bifurcation, and that being the haves and the have-nots. And what we have seen is that increasingly the have-nots are the folks with no post-secondary education. They are increasingly rural, they're increasingly people of color, and they are increasingly women who are part of the have-nots. And as we become an increasingly knowledge-driven economy, it begs the question of how are we preparing our students to work with the robots, right? To conceive of a future, to conceive of a career where we are working alongside the robots. The robots are here, whether it's an actual physical robot, whether it is a chatbot. I know many of you are using artificial intelligence as part of your recruitment and retention strategies. If I could just ask, if you could put in the chat, are you using any kind of artificial intelligence for your recruitment or retention at your college? And if so, how might you be using that? Let's see. Yep. And AI chatbots. Yeah, those are becoming increasingly more popular, and they're able to answer so many questions that we don't, that free us humans. So as part of the evolution, as I see the evolution of the recruitment and admissions work, and even some of the advising work, there's so much of it that we are outsourcing right now, essentially to the robots. You fill it up, you provide it with the answers and the questions that you're most likely to ask. And it also uses its own artificial intelligence to predict some of the questions that students may ask, and it answers some of those questions for students. So it allows us, the use of artificial intelligence allows us to be able to focus on building those relationships, to focus on those things that are uniquely human, and to focus on the more complex questions that students might have. I'm interested in the person who's using the financial aid chat box for financial aid. Can you tell us a little bit about the extent to which you are using that? Do you know? Is it mostly to answer basic questions?
Yeah, so when students, hi, I'm Nicole from Framingham State. When students go to just our general financial aid homepage, it will pop up automatically to answer basic questions. I honestly don't know much more detail on that because it's not typically something I'm privy to knowing, but it is something that will pop up when students land on their page. We currently don't use it for any admissions related purposes.
That's interesting. Anyone using blockchain technology right now? Or are using AI chatbots in a more complex way besides the basic questions? So that is one of the things that we're going to be seeing a lot more. If you follow the American Council on Education, they are having, they just put out a big RFP about 3 months ago, looking at the use of blockchain technology in higher education, basically using it for a lot of macro data analysis, taking large numbers of data and then crunching them, making sense out of it, so that we can use them for decision making. So we are seeing a lot of that. So whether we are using that technology, those technologies ourselves, or we are preparing students to use these technologies, because we are becoming a much more knowledge-driven economy, we are moving away from sort of the very labor-intensive, and even in manufacturing, we're seeing the use of much more advanced technologies. We're moving away from that. We need to be able to teach students how to use these technologies, and our curricula need to mirror the kinds of experiences and the expectations that employers holds for our students in the workforce. Let's see. And then the other thing that we also need to consider, which helps us to begin to think about the equity imperative as part of all of this, is the fact that by 2045, our country is predicted to be minority white. So what does that mean? It means that we can no longer continue to have large proportions of students of color who are not retained, who are not persisting, and who are not successful. And also it calls for our recruitment strategies to have a higher level of cultural sensitivity, for us to be much more, to have that level of cultural dexterity, especially those of us who are working with students who are different from us. So what we are seeing is a change in not just the labor force as we are seeing it with our colleagues, and how do we work with colleagues who are different from us in our workplaces, but also how do we work with students who are different? How do we recruit students who are different? And how do we create an environment where students of color begin to feel a sense of belonging, where they feel like this is my college too, and I also belong here? And for those of you who have been watching some of the, although now that we've been in the middle of the pandemic, we've had fewer of them, but if you've been watching the case at Smith College, for instance, when they had a couple of years ago, the Black student who had the cop called on her because she didn't belong, and then now they're seeing the reverse, that as they are entering the work of developing cultural competence on campus, they are seeing some of the employees. There's a lawsuit, in fact, by an employee who said, this anti-racist work, this cultural dexterity work is also anti-white, and find it to be racist on the other side. So those are some of the things that we need to contend with as a field, we need to contend with as a sector. And at the end of the day, one of the things that I say to students, that I say to our colleagues is, if we don't learn to develop the level of cultural dexterity that allows us to work with all students, what we end up doing is cutting ourselves short, is actually ending our own employments. Because our country is changing, our country is becoming much more integrated, our country is becoming more brown, and it's important for us to develop that level of cultural dexterity. And then lastly, as we look at the labor shortage that we are already having across most of the country, and probably more severe in the Northeast, we need an educated workforce. We can't afford to have a certain proportion, a certain kind of students who are not educated to be left behind. We cannot afford to have that. Our economy depends on it. And there's only so much room in the service economy to absorb people with lower level education. So whose business is retention and whose business are retention and recruitment? It's everyone's business, in my opinion. We need to know, we need to each understand what role we play. So I have a few questions for you guys. Whether you know, if you want, you can read them for yourselves, you know, whether you know your recruitment and retention strategies, whether you know what are the most effective strategies on your campus that get students back into the game, get them back on campus, especially during this pandemic. What are you facing in terms of your individual campuses, and how are you responding to that? Do you know what matters most to your students, and how well are your varied interventions working, and for whom? The days of one size fits all are definitely long gone, and likely never to return. Just a second, I think my lights went off. I'm very interested. What are people's thoughts on these questions? What is your pandemic game plan? How are you preparing for the fall of 2021? Are any of you going to be completely in person as before? Feel free to use the chat, or feel free to speak up also. Joanne, and where are you? Mass Maritime, yeah. It's I can definitely see how you're able to keep. Joanne, can you tell us a little bit about your strategy for keeping people safe? Right, yours is unique. Moxie.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to chime in there a little bit. The Maritime is a pretty unique place, and that actually works to our advantage when it comes to offering student safety. Regimented academy means lots of rules. We have set up a lot of protocols for our students, including masking on campus at all times. And, you know, because of the regiment, they are either following the rules or they're being, when I say disciplined, spoken to. So that's been a big help for us. And the nature of our curriculum is really hands-on. So we definitely have to have students in place. As a matter of fact, our seniors in our license track are sitting for the Coast Guard exams currently. Socially distanced, masked, and so yeah, we're hoping for success.
So Joanne, are your students all in a ship?
Well, that's the thing, not currently, but we are going on C-term, and all of those students have been vaccinated. We were able to obtain from the state of Massachusetts vaccines for all of the students, staff, and faculty that will be on C-term, which will be beginning in May.
Okay, fantastic. And how long are they on at sea?
It's gonna be abbreviated at sea, mostly because we can't stop at the normal ports of call because no country will accept a ship from anywhere right now. So they'll be doing something up and down the East Coast and potentially docking in some domestic ports for now.
Okay, fantastic. Definitely a unique situation that we have there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how many schools have been open, and for those of you that have been open, have you seen anything? Have you seen any incidents of outbreaks? Certainly here in Western Mass, the ones at UMass have been reported on pretty widely. No, sounds like folks have had it under control. All right. So one of the things that I also wanted to talk about with you today is how well do you relate with your faculty and staff of color? So, and how well do you work with those who are different from you? One of the things, some of the things that I am involved with include working with the Racial Equity and Justice Institute. And I know that a number of you are part of that. And it's been really interesting to have the two caucus groups that we have, a white caucus group as well as a caucus group of people of color, and asking what are some of the things that really affect relationships, especially relationships with students of color. And some of what we've been seeing is the treatment of faculty and staff of color, right? How that speaks volumes to one's cultural dexterity. And also when we look at the existing literature on how these students make relationships, they look for people who look like them, people who have had similar experiences. And we see some of the same with students who are also members of the LGBTQ community. So how well do they look and find mentors within their community, at their colleges? How are we bolstering those relationships? How are we making sure to these students that they are visible? Are we conducting equity audits on our campuses to make sure that our policies, the way that they speak to students, the way that we relate to students, our practices, and the events, the activities that we have, do all students feel seen? And the forums that we create for students to communicate, the mechanisms, the infrastructures that we have in place, do those students feel seen? And also, do they have an adult on campus, someone to whom they can turn when things get really hard or when they have a reason to celebrate? So as we look at retention, recruitment, transfer, all of these activities, we are now understanding how important it is for them to have those relationships, and how important it is for not just them to have a sense of belonging for those, but also for those faculty and staff to have those relationships. And that really requires creating a space often for some difficult conversations, for courageous conversations, and to be able to go to colleagues and to say, you know, I'm not sure how to interpret these messages. I'm not sure how to interpret these comments from students. I'm not sure how to interpret even some of the behaviors. I can tell you that one of the things that we are having many more of on my campus is conversations with students of color. And last night we just had one. And when I asked the students, what else can we do? And they said, you know, honestly, just having this space, having access to the president, having access to people who allow themselves to be authentic and to seem normal, to have those relationships with us really make a big difference. So I would encourage you, if you've not done an equity audit at your own campus, if you've not done some of those tests, there are a number of different tools out there to measure how well you yourself, how high your level of cultural dexterity is. And so I recommend that you do take an opportunity to experiment with some of those. And then also thinking entrepreneurially, innovatively, and outside of the box. This is a time when everything is changing. What we are seeing is much more competition among our institutions. If you look at the movement, which I don't think is just a pandemic phenomenon, where we have many of the four-year schools saying, you no longer need to have an admission exam to come in. Some of them made those things. A few of them said permanently. Many of them, to most of them, said only for the next 2 years or only for the next 3 years. My guess is this is going to be here to stay. What we are seeing is, in this environment of fewer students, many more colleges, high level of competitions, all the closures and mergers that we are seeing, those phenomena are here to stay. And so that means more work for us in terms of putting effort into student retention, and more work for us in terms of understanding our students and adopting an evolutionary mindset, understanding that this is a changing environment. And if you look at Gen Z, you look at Gen Alpha, even though they seem to be very close to each other, they're also very different. So how do we go to the places where the students are? And right now what we are seeing is that a lot of them are going to social media. How do we go to the social media platforms where they are interacting, where they are spending their times? That is how we'll be able to reach them and get a sense of where and how and what they are looking for in terms of education. Another phenomenon that we are seeing, and I think we'll start seeing a lot more of, is students, younger students who are saying, you know, the gap year, that's exactly what I want. I'm not into going into college right away. I just spent 12 years of straight up college and I want to do something different. So what does that look like in terms of how we adapt to this changing expectation, where we may have our models that say this is what in our catchment area, what our high schools look like, this is what the populations that we are expecting to come, and then at the end of the day, what we end up having is enrollment numbers that are far lower than what we were expecting. So it's very interesting in this bifurcation where you have, on the one hand, the students who are going for the early college, who are highly motivated, and on the other hand, we end up having the other students who are saying, you know, I'm not quite ready for this. So having an evolutionary mindset, being change adept, being adept at changes, at making changes on the fly, and also, you know, are we breaking down our silos, or are we getting comfortable in them? So it's really important to understand, and I think increasingly so, how do we create mechanisms for communicating about students, not just about their grades, not just about whether or not they are submitting assignments, but looking more broadly, how do we communicate about students and with students in ways that are authentic, in ways that allow us to gather information that we need to be able to make changes, just-in-time changes. So I will open that up. Oh, I put this comment before about your employment status. At the end of the day, it really comes down to, you know, if we're not evolving, it will mean our own demise. So let me just ask some of you, how are you breaking down the silos? What kinds of communication channels are you using on your own campuses that are novel and different?
At Sterling College in Crossway, Vermont, we're a small campus, so we weekly have a student engagement meeting that brings together faculty advisors, admissions, student life, and other stakeholders. And we're able to talk about kind of ongoing things going on to the community, the kind of programming we wanted to do, but we often will break this down and talk about individual students whose needs surface either through the academic lens from their advisors or through a student life issue or some kind of celebration. And we're able to take then a holistic approach to how we support them, whether that's tapping them into resources for communities of color, if that's tapping them into the inter-peer services, if that's elevating them through the community meeting, and really kind of looking just beyond their performance in the academic realm, but how they kind of are functioning and how we care for each other on a community level. That feels much different than previous organizations I've worked with.
That's great, Moxie. And have you seen any impact on some of your retention, persistence, graduation, and I guess maybe not your transfer rates because you're having students transferred into Sterling?
Correct. Yeah, we're often a transfer receiving school because we're specialized and kind of niched in our but yes, since we have started a more holistic advising process, so having our advisors not just look at the academic performance, but look at life skills. Do you have a checking account? Where's the doctor's office? Have you navigated insurance? How are you doing in your, in your friendships? So like that lens, and then bring those kind of issues being kind of brought up in student engagement. We tracked our student retention from the high 60s into the low 90s. Our sample size is 125 students, so we're talking very small numbers.
Very small. Yeah.
But it was definitely an impact that we have seen and been able to continue to sustain over the last 3 years as we have made these changes.
That's great. I can tell you that I send emails to students every couple of weeks, and often I will include a video, a poem, a speech, other things that, and even actually one time, at one point I sent them one of those videos where you just, a meditation video, And it's amazing how it makes a difference for students and they really appreciate it. And just having open student hours, making your president and other high level folks available to them, and also coupled with folks whom they know, so that if the president feels so removed from them, they can also have folks with whom they relate on a regular basis, and getting some of that encouragement to attend come from them. And it's been incredible, the response that we've gotten to from that during the pandemic, that students really appreciate it much more than we would have realized. I see some folks have also chimed in on the chat. Kevin, can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing? Do you mind speaking out? Do you mind being seen, or even if you're not seen?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. It's still pretty early in our process of doing that. And with a big school like UMass Amherst, these things move slowly sometimes, but trying to break down both through cross-training and through just really training our transfer counselors like myself to be able to do more of the advisement piece, to ease between us and NSO and when they're here on campus, so that and that they're having access to and knowledge of other support services on campus, and so that they're not being dropped off or getting lost along the way. It's still relatively early, so I don't know that there's a ton of data on what that looks like, but anecdotally, it seems like it makes it a lot easier to make sure these students don't get lost.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, those are great. I can tell you, somebody put about classroom visits. I make classroom visits every semester. I ask faculty if they can allow me to come, and those who would like me to come, I go to their classes. And it's really, the conversation that I have is not about enrolling for the next semester or a retention specific, but to build the rapport, to build the relationship with them is really important. And to say, hey, look at where I came from and look at where I am now. It makes a difference for students. Equity hubs, huh? Nick, can you tell us a little bit about your equity hubs?
No, it was just the one that I was seeing at UMass Amherst. So they're starting to get it out on the site.
Okay. Does anyone know about UMass Amherst Equity Hub? Ryan, you are the Ryan I thought of. Ryan Waterberg.
It's true, it's true. How are you?
All right. So good to see you.
You as well. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. So tell us about the amazing work that you're doing at Mass Bay.
It's work that we haven't implemented yet. I was just having a conversation recently with a colleague of mine about some of our primarily one semester and some of our multi-semester health sciences programs where students enter the program, but the perception is that those students are lacking some of the technological skills that they need to be most successful in the field after they've completed the program. And so we're working on developing some pre-course assessments for students that they may take during orientation that would help us gauge a student's self-reported confidence in technology and academic preparation. And rather than wait until the student has begun the semester, and rather than waiting for an instructor or someone else on campus to refer that student to an academic or technological support person, we would use a threshold in that assessment to automatically filter students into recommendations or referrals for technological or academic support.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Anyone else doing anything that you would consider a best practice or an emergent practice you're experimenting with? I think this is definitely the time that we experiment, not just for the pandemic, I think for what's ahead. As I tell my campus all the time, we will survive this pandemic. It's not the pandemic that's going to do us in. If anything does us in, for most of our institutions, especially if you are rural or you are a small institution, it's the post-pandemic. How do you use this opportunity to evolve? How do you use this opportunity to do things differently, to do some assessments, to experiment? and to fail and learn from those failures and to also succeed. We've been very lucky that I think for most of us in community colleges that we have a president in the White House who is very supportive of community colleges, who's been very supportive of higher ed in general, and sending some lots of funding our way and allowing us to experiment with things and fund things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to. So I see this as a really great opportunity to do some to engage in some innovative practices that we otherwise wouldn't have. And Jessica, yes, mentoring at Mass Bay, that's really awesome. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the mentoring at Mass Bay. I remember being involved in some of those, and I know that many have really just taken off, and that's a great, a phenomenal retention tool, and a great tool for also recruiting students to say, hey, look, we have these great relationships with mentors, we have these great multicultural programs. Do you feel sufficiently informed to talk about those, Jessica?
I don't know, some of our programming is just getting off the ground. And I think, but we really are doing a lot more of that. I would say, along with the mentoring, yeah, we're just really trying to build that into almost all different areas within the college. So it's just really great to see. I've been at the college for 10 years, and it's just, I think it's a great direction to be heading in. I probably don't have enough information yet on all the different ways, because we're kind of at the precipice, but we're definitely really building that, and I think it's a great area to focus on.
Great. As you're talking about mentoring, it reminds me of this book. If you've not read this book, Robot Proof by Joseph Aoun, I definitely recommend it. It's a very short one. Let's see, 140 pages, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. And he talks about the humanics. He talks about the role of co-ops. He talks about experiential learning. He talks about humans cohabiting and working alongside robots. And it's not this dystopian, super futurist book. What he talks about is very, very real, and very rational, and in some ways we are experiencing that right now. He talks about how do we evolve the humanities, how do we integrate the humanities and the technical sciences, and what students today are looking for, and the skills and the knowledge and the dispositions that they need. Are we equipping them with that? Are we providing education that is relevant, education that students are actually seeking, education that is going to make a difference in their lives? Or are we simply doing the same old, same old? If you've not read that book, I definitely recommend it. Tara, I take it you've read the book already.
No, I have not actually, but I love a good recommendation like that. Thank you.
Yes, it's and then the next book I'm going to talk about, and this is really where we will spend most of our discussion, is Becoming a Student Ready College by Tia McNair and a few other folks. So what we've been talking about, essentially about transfer, about admission, about access, about equity, about persistence, about graduation. We all want to see our students graduate before they actually transfer. How do we get them to that to that finish line? We do that by becoming more student-ready colleges, by becoming, it's a journey, it's not a destination, it's not, yes, we finally hit that destination of being a student-ready college, now we can take a rest. It is evolving, it is continuing as the generations are changing, as student preferences are changing, as students' facility and dexterity with technology and with so many other things are changing. It's a way for us to continuously assess how well we are serving them. So they define student-ready college as a college that is strategically and holistically advancing student success, that works tirelessly to educate all students for civic and economic participation in a global interconnected society. So what does that mean to us in terms of our work? any takers? Why does this matter for recruitment? Why does this matter for admissions? Why does this matter for transfer? Why should we give a hoot?
One thing I've been thinking a lot about, I work at UMass Boston. I'm sorry, Kevin, I think I
That's
cut you
my
off there.
alma mater. Go UMass,
really?
go Beacons. Yep.
Very, very cool. I've been thinking a lot about this idea of a transfer receptive curriculum. So some of our majors in particular have a lot of 300 level coursework that our community college students simply can't transfer in. And we've just been starting to have these conversations about, is this course actually equivalent in content and scope? And why does it have to be a 300 level? Could it be a 200 level so the student can potentially transfer it in from a community college? So that's just something thinking about what barriers are in the curriculum for students to complete their degrees.
Sydney, I would definitely recommend writing an article about this transfer receptive curriculum if you're ever interested in writing an Inside Higher Ed.
Well, thank you. I think the term is not coined by me. So I think it is, I heard it at a conference once. So I think I need to cite my source before I write the article, but yeah.
Yes, but amplify the ideas. I like that. Kevin, you were going to add something here.
Yeah, so what I was going to add was, I think a big part of being a student ready, at least from an admissions perspective, is being conscious of recognizing the student's holistic world in terms of really stating out in terms of that they're more than just here's your GPA, here's your courses, and actually meeting them and celebrating the other things that they're bringing to our campuses, and from there leading them to resources and engagement opportunities and things here at UMass or whatever school they're going to or are at. So I think that holistic perspective on a student isn't just to retain them, but to celebrate them. So.
Right. I completely agree with you. And I think that also goes back to what Moxie was saying. How do we engage with students on things that are more than just their academic work? And I can tell you that on our campus, we are very intentionally trying to become as technological, as digital as possible, as quickly as possible. And the point behind that is to free us up from the workaround work that we are doing so that the humans can do the human work of building relationships with students, of understanding them, as opposed to figuring out how to, tame a, paper process or how to do a half good job melding a paper process with a tech process, but really how do we invest in technology so that we can do what is uniquely human and what the robots will never be able to replace us. And because we know, especially for community college students, what matters most are those relationships. That's what, even in times when it gets difficult, we can retain them if we know that money is the problem, if we know that childcare is the problem. And we are looking at also implementing, and once we open up back in September, we'll be able to do this, a child watch program where we partner with the YMCA. They can't call it a child care program because that calls for a different level of scrutiny by the state, but a child watch where you can drop off your students, your child for up to 3 hours, go to class, you pay a minimum fee, maybe $2.50 as we did in New Jersey when I was president in New Jersey, up to $3 students had to pay. And even then students who couldn't pay that fee, we gave them a scholarship for that. So those are some of the things that we're experimenting with. But unless you have those relationships with students, you won't know that child care is the issue that keeps them from progressing with their careers. Karen, tell us a little bit about your some of the silver linings of working remotely.
I am a person, so working remotely has been a significant challenge, and I think a lot of our colleagues here at NETA feel that way. But I've always tried to get to know the students that I work with. Being a transfer counselor, I'm at Mass Bay it really made, you're one of many, and you can't always reach all of the students. But during the pandemic, you really had to pause and you had to slow down, and you had to remind the students, that this was hard, and you had to encourage them, to share those things. I remember attending some professional development with Southern New Hampshire that they offered to us transfer counselors, and one of their speakers talked about grace and having grace for ourselves and encouraging that with our students. And I really think there were processes within, our system at Mass Bay that we really pulled back from, so no longer were you filling out the form with the student, you were having a conversation with them about it. And then as the advisor, you did the form later, and it wasn't something that they did with you. So it wasn't about that transaction. It was about, how are they, what are they doing in that check-in?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they also feel like you care about them and they're more than a number and we're not just caring about enrollment. That makes a lot of sense. Joanne, you want to talk about some of the good experiences that you've had? And I see Joshua had some ideas too.
Yeah, it's funny how, I've said to some of the students at times, we're both here in our office/bedroom, so, we can relax and kind of drop the formality that you sometimes get, a student comes into your office and they immediately tense up. So I find them to be a little more relaxed. I also find that from my position, if I'm meeting with students, which I have from California, from Detroit, from Kentucky, we tend to get students from everywhere who are interested, and we can talk, and then we don't have to, we can hash out a lot of details, and then they can come visit when, they have free time, but we've already set the table for them to get started. So I'm going to keep it. I'm not letting go of Zoom. I'll tell you that, at least for that purpose anyway.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So I'm going to give you some more definition of student-ready colleges. But I also want to know about some of the practices. What are you going to move forward to keep as we move forward? What are the practices that you will keep with you that you've seen that have been really either really promising or that have taught you a lot? What are some of those things that you are seeing during this time? So give that some thought. So becoming a student-ready college. At student-ready colleges, all services and activities from admissions to the business office to the classroom and even campus security are intentionally designed to facilitate students' progressive advancement toward college completion and positive post-college outcomes. Student-ready colleges are committed to not only student achievement, but also to organizational learning and institutional improvement. Student-ready colleges offer a holistic approach to leadership that empowers all members of the campus community to serve as leaders and educators. To me, at the end of the day, that very last paragraph captures my attention because it's about how we are empowering folks, how we are helping folks develop the autonomy to be able to do your jobs well, to be able to also get a sense of satisfaction and meaning out of your job. When you think about this time, how many of you feel so much better when you reach a student versus the days when you feel like you just sat in Zoom all day and didn't do, and all your work is still piling up waiting for you, right? So I see all of the heads moving. It's about building that autonomy. It's about building that sense of mutual dependence. And it's about seeing how we can learn as an organization. I'd be very interested in learning, in knowing some of the things that you have learned in terms of your organization that may influence either organizational reorganization in your area or more integration in your different areas as a result of the pandemic. What are some of the things that rise to the top for you in terms of your learnings during this time? We so seldom take the time to reflect on what's worked well and what we would like to bring forward. I can tell you here at Greenfield, it's one of the things that we've done a couple of times every semester to say, what's worked well, and post-pandemic, what do we want to bring forward with us? And what do we want to stop doing? We can't do the same old, that's proven to be less effective or that takes time away from energy that we could be putting into something that is much more effective. Our energies are not finite, and neither are our resources. I'd be happy to hear some of your voices about what you want to bring forward and what you want to stop doing. Moxie, looks like you want to continue doing the virtual tours. Limari, I can't quite see what you said.
I can actually talk if you want. I said we started last year doing these one-on-one appointments with our admitted transfer students, and I have what I call my transfer triage team. So I have someone from the registrar's office, someone from advising, and someone from financial aid that do these one-on-one appointments with me. So the student has these next steps, like they have tons of questions when they're admitted. They don't know what the next steps are. They have questions about their transfer credit evaluation. They have questions about advising. I bring these ladies together and we have a one-on-one appointment with the student for 30 minutes, and the student gets to just ask any questions that they have about next steps to determine whether they want to deposit with us or not. If they're deposited and the advising center has a scheduled appointments already, they can schedule their appointments. Alcira for financial aid looks at their financial aid while they're in the meeting. Whitney from registrar's office will look at their transfer credit evaluation. A lot of times things will get done, things will get shifted. It's been really, really helpful for the students. We did probably about 75 of them last year between April and August.
That's quite a few.
So yeah, I thought that was a pretty good number. And then this year we started again, we just started in March. So we've had probably a handful, like a dozen already that we've scheduled. And that's something that I think I want to continue doing, even being Fitchburg State is supposed to be fully on campus in the fall. But I think with admitted students, I think bringing everyone together, it's hard sometimes for a transfer student to come on campus. So doing these virtual appointments, they're able to speak to 4 people, 5 people all at once. Sometimes the parent comes on and they're in the video, the virtual meeting with us, and the parent starts asking a bunch of questions. So it's been really helpful. And that's something that I think we want to keep doing. I want to keep doing at least. So, and I think I'll be able to do that. So yeah.
Fantastic. Sydney, can you tell us a little bit more?
Oh, I just like Lamari's transfer triage team name. That's what I got. I just like.
I can't take that name. Genoa actually took that name. We used to do Transfer Tuesdays, info sessions in person, and no one ever showed up. And then when we started doing these, Jenna was like, oh, it's like your transfer triage team. I'm like, I like it. I'm keeping it.
I love the marketing. Yeah, just co-signing that.
Yep. Go ahead. Take it.
Hey, you could add a Taco Tuesday to that too.
Yeah, I could.
A Taco Thursday to that. Add a little bit of food for people. Yeah.
Send them a Grubhub, a gift card to get a taco. No,
You're on to something there. You're on to something there. Appreciate that.
Or the app workshop, they complete their application, you send them appetizers. These were pitched at our institution and we did not do them. So if anyone else can take them up.
I love it.
Beth, what else do you have in mind? Ooh, Cindy also. I love that. Do any of you guys want to talk a little bit to some of the innovations that you would like to move forward with?
One of the things that I would love to see is we talked a little bit about this in a breakout room yesterday, but in talking about belonging and, I love what you're saying about, the robots, and then the humans will be the ones to keep promoting that connection. I would love to see our admissions take a student of color or LGBT with them, someone of LGBT, and go on admissions, visit high schools, things like that, to show or to help promote that there are places of belonging, and you will get, some support in this. I would love to see that.
That's great. Yeah, I can tell you one of the things that we started doing, because we have so many retired folks in our region, We are using senior volunteers. So we create, it's a novel program. It's mutually beneficial. We have seniors who come on. Some of them want to be mentors. Some of them want to be tutors. Some of them want to be conversation partners. Some of them want to be career guide orienters. Some of them just want to be general life support for folks. And we have students that we pair them with based on their interest. And these are people who have had successful careers, who are available for students, who are available to talk to them. And so if they're taking a foreign language, you can speak to them. They can speak to you in English. You can speak to them in your language. We had an email from a student who said, I'm 32 years old. I tried to rent an apartment and I'm just right now learning about credit. And I need to find a place with my kids, but I have horrible credit. I can't, the landlords are looking for a credit of a certain level. Even though my salary is okay, I still can't rent, and they said, I just want to be connected with someone who can give me some life advice. So when we think about social capital, and I want to go back to Moxie's point, it's not just, they don't just need academic capital. They don't just need the assets that will help them to be successful in the classroom. They're also thinking about life beyond the classroom. So how do we help them to develop that? And so it's been pretty eye-opening in terms of the range of supports that students are asking for, and very rewarding and very gratifying for our seniors who are able to, at that stage in their lives, to live, to give, and to give so generously. So it's been wonderful. Let's see, Tara, would you like to make that comment? And Cindy, I still have you in my sight.
Oh, no, that's great. I've learned a lot over this past year, and I find that, we travel so much to the different schools. One day I'm in Massachusetts, one day I'm in New Jersey, and some of the events are great, some of them are not, but I've been able to be really productive to be able to offer students a variety of ways to connect. Whether it's one-on-one or a video that we make, or we do a coffee chat with transfer advisors to kind of, collaborate on what works best. So, although I miss traveling and I hope to get back out there in the fall, it will be great to still be able to offer virtual events for those that need it, or the one-on-ones.
Right. And for those of us who had faculty that were resistant to anything internet, anything online, I think we've learned a lot, where we'll never go back to the old way of doing things, right? The limited ways. Yeah, one of the things that at my college we're also realizing that we will continue doing is providing access to all kinds of technologies. Before, we used to have students say, you can borrow this computer for, say, 2-3 weeks at a time, but now we're saying, take it, keep it, and it's an investment that we're going to make. And also investing in how we in how we maintain and what we buy, and expecting a certain number to come back broken, and just building it into the budget to be able to do that. Let's see, there was one more, besides Cindy, there was one more person. Tara, would you like to speak to some of the practices that you will bring forward with you?
Sure. I mean, I think there's plenty from this week that we'll bring forward, right? Or this year. But I think the biggest thing is that some of this technology has existed for years, actually. It's just that it wasn't really embraced fully by faculty or staff, or even students in some cases. And I think that in order to, we all have, as you mentioned, limited bandwidth and resources and time and money and all of these things. So in order to really be able to keep some of these things that have been just game changers in so many cases, we really have been given, I think, the urgency to force or require everyone to really embrace the technology and tools that do exist on campus, which I think has given us a good push in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. We have so much more than we realized, so much more than we harnessed before. Wonderful. So, all right, thank you, appreciate that note. So to end with, engaging stakeholders. is really important. What does your college strategic plan say? Do you know what it says? Is it collecting electronic dust? Is any of this stuff in there? How are you measuring it? Those are really great things as we are realizing all of these new things, all of these new ways that we can engage. We have an opportunity to really begin to integrate these as part of our strategic plan so that it becomes a living document and it ensures that we are all rowing in the same direction. And in terms of unions, you know, I think for those of us who have unions in our campus, we are coming up at a time where we really need more union advocacy to support students and to also support the wraparound services that students need. This is going to be it is already incredibly important, but I think to have the newfound union energy be targeted towards something that can be of service to the entire college community and also of service to our own continued existence is really important. And also having students advocate for their needs. Our students, they are the constituents of the locally elected officials. So how do we look at the voice of the students, the power of the students, and harness that also in ways that we may not have done before? And then engaging our board, engaging our shared governance structure. To me, that is what shared governance is designed for. That's what it should be used for, to see how do we all get in the same direction? How do we pull our resources? How do we pull our voices together to really make some of these changes to become a student-ready college and to make the kinds of changes that we want to see around equity, around access, around persistence, graduation, and transfer. So that is really my presentation. I'd be happy to take some questions from you guys. Oh, no, I have one more slide. Oh, collaborating for student success. Oh, sorry, so sorry about that. Here's a little bonus. So, you know, so when we think about our collaborations, you know, how do we collaborate to promote a culture of inclusion and make excellence inclusive for students and staff? If we cannot retain the staff of color, we cannot retain the students of color. If we cannot retain the LGBTQ staff, we cannot retain the students of color. And our institutions cannot continue to look lily white. That just spells our demise. Our students are not going to feel a sense of belonging. The more integrated we become, the better. And the more advocates that we have among our cis and white allies, the more important it is for our students, because then they feel that the people who may not look like them, who may have different lived experiences, can appropriately and effectively advocate for them as well. And then demonstrating an ethic of care. Students can see that. They can see when we care about removing the systemic barriers and the challenges for them. They can tell when we are committed to their success, when we are a learning organization, when we are promoting student engagement, when we are removing the barriers for them. And then last thing I will say to all of us is it's important that we embrace and lead with an evolutionary mindset. Everything is changing, nothing is the same. The sooner we become part of that change, the better. So I'll stop that. I'll take some questions, and I'll take some questions about anything, any random questions also. You know, I did a presentation. I had someone who said to me, you know, you should have a slide at the end that says, ask a president, because we don't often see presidents, and they're often usually a little bit different. You're not what we think of. You don't bring the same energy, and you're just a little bit different. So any kind of oddball questions you may have, ask a president. I'm happy to take that. And if you don't want to show your face, although your colleagues know you, I may not know you, and who knows, we may never see each other again. And I may not remember your face. So anyway, happy to ask. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Even if you think it is a stupid question, I'm happy to answer it. My pleasure, Lamari. All right, they all got super quiet.
Well, I just want to be mindful of everybody's time. It is 12:50 and the next session starts at 1 o'clock. So obviously if anybody needs to leave, you know, to do what they need to do in the next 10 minutes before the session start, then, please feel free to, thank Dr. Salomon-Fernandez for her great presentation. And then, we'll see you back here at 1 o'clock. But I do definitely want to thank you very much for joining us today and sharing everything that you did share. And I think that the conversations that we had this morning are really going to carry us through to the next sessions. And we really do appreciate that. And I do actually want to share our certificate of appreciation with you for presenting today. And you'll be getting this by email, but just wanted to make sure that you were recognized for being here today. And we very much appreciate all that you shared with us. And, I think that you being the public face of Greenfield Community College and getting on the ground level and introducing yourself to your students is so important. I have so many students that I supervise that they are often criticized for not making eye contact with a lot of the faculty and the staff on campus. And I actually go back to the faculty and staff and I said, I'm sorry, but did you introduce yourself to them? Because they don't know who you are. I know you've been here for a long time, but they have not, and they don't know who you are. So why don't you do the introduction, and then maybe they'll recognize you the next time that you come around. And that made a huge difference for a lot of the faculty and staff because they just didn't realize it and they didn't see it that way. So I think that what you're doing is fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much. It was great to spend some time with you guys. And I learned so much when I do these. And that's why I like to have the engagement because I think it's about learning, and the same things that I preach, it allows me to continue to learn. Oh, hey, Brian, good to see you. And what's up? Yeah, I saw he gave me, I kind of like, okay, what's up? Okay, it's all right. It's all good. It allows me to connect and learn a lot. So thank you so much for your comments. Thank you for sharing, and enjoy your bio breaks and enjoy the rest of the conference. Take care, everyone.